I will admit it has been a tough year, not only for Lori, my wife, but for all of us. For 16 years, I worked for Vans, Screw, and Nut. We made custom fasteners for manufacturers. When a company creates a product, they can't just go to the local hardware store to buy screws. Everything has to be made to their specifications. I started in sales and worked my way up to sales manager. It was a great job and paid very well. If I met all 4 of my quarterly quotas, which I always did, my year-end bonus would go over $100,000. Of course, with so many manufacturers going overseas, we had to fight to maintain our market share. But I built a good, hard-working sales team, and we always managed to do better than last year. A little over a year ago, all the big shots in the company, including myself, were called into an unscheduled meeting. We were all very shocked to learn that the owner of the company was retiring and was in secret negotiations with a California conglomerate to buy the company. We were sold. A new CEO was introduced, and we were all promised that our jobs would be safe and nothing would change as far as management was concerned. This turned out to be a lie. Within 2 months, heads began to roll. I saw the handwriting on the wall and started looking for a new job, but my time came before I found anything. After patting me on the back and holding a 10-grand severance package in my hand, they walked me right out the door. At first, Lori and I didn't worry too much, but as the months passed, I began to realize how the economy had changed over the years I had my warm job. Not only had most of the manufacturing gone overseas, but a number of the domestic firms that remained were buying their fasteners from overseas. I wondered how we stayed so strong, but that was no longer my concern. I needed to find a job. At this time, Lance, our 17-year-old son, was graduating from high school. I had mixed emotions when he announced he was going into the Army right after graduation. With all that was going on in the Middle East, I feared for his safety, and of course we would both miss him terribly. On the other hand, I was glad we didn't have to pay for college because, frankly, we just didn't have the money. About 5 months after I was downsized, it became clear that finding another job for $100,000 wasn't going to be easy, so I started setting my goals a little lower. To fill what I was sure was a temporary financial gap, Lori started looking for something too. In fact, she found a job before I did. She was hired as a low-level secretary for a software company. It didn't pay much, but it was still more than my unemployment check. A month after Lori started working, I took a sales position at Enright Automotive. They did aftermarket car parts. For the first couple months, I got a token paycheck during training. After that, I was assigned a salary plus commission. It was never going to be a high-paying job. One guy worked for them for 12 years and was the highest-paid salesman there. He only made $60,000 a year. You can imagine the strain that puts on our budget. We were used to all the financial trappings of a wealthy family. We lived in a nice house with a solid mortgage and had 2 Cadillacs, only one of which was paid off. This one was mine. It was a 5-year-old CTS. Lori drove the same model, but we had only bought it a few months before I was laid off. We also had several credit cards, most of which were already maxed out. Lori and I missed our evenings on the town, too. That was another advantage. After all, if you can't enjoy life, what's the point of having money? We went out all the time. Dinner with friends, sometimes dancing, sometimes a show, a play, or maybe a concert. It wasn't like a regular date at all. We just kicked up our heels when we felt like it. It usually happened 2 or 3 times a month and sometimes more often. Unfortunately, it was one of the first things to suffer when we had to start to scale down. It seemed to be harder on Lori than it was on me. Growing up, her family had more money than I did. I didn't start having fun and enjoying myself until I started college, but my wife partied with her dad and mom all the time. It was almost second nature to her. We hadn't left the house in many months, and Lori started complaining. From her perspective, the bills could wait. It first started about 3 months ago. "Skylar, we have to do something. I'm going crazy sitting at home night and night and doing nothing. I want to go out like I used to. I want to have some fun." Lori always had a bad time. I sat at the kitchen table going over our bills. Slowly, very slowly, we were just starting to climb out of the hole little by little. I looked at my beautiful wife. "Sure, no problem," I replied sarcastically. "Just tell me which of these bills not to pay." She just stared at me. For a moment, I thought she was going to scream, but whatever she was thinking, she kept to herself. As soon as I said what I said, I felt sick to my stomach. It wasn't actually such a terrible request. "I'm sorry, honey," I apologized. "I promise it won't always be like this. I won't stop looking for a better job, but for now, we just need to chill out a little." "Cool off?" she growled. "Skylar, we've been cooling it for almost a year now. I feel like a caged animal. I need to get out and have some fun." "I know, honey, I know," I said, trying to calm her down. "Look, we have a lot of catching up to do. 5 months ago, we missed a house payment and our second car payment. We came this close," I said, holding my thumb and index finger about an inch apart, "to getting your car back. We'll be fine with this month's commission check, except for one car payment. If we can get the grocery bill down, we'll be all set in 2 months." I saw Lori's lips pressed together. She wasn't a happy camper, and I really couldn't blame her. And then I had what I thought was a great idea. "Tell you what, why don't you and I go to the Lincoln Park Zoo this weekend? It's free, and we haven't been there since Lance was little." "Skylar, I don't want to commune with nature. I want to commune with nightlife," she grinned. "I want to eat, drink, and dance until my legs fall off. Darling, please bear with me a little longer. I promise once we get all the bills sorted out, we'll celebrate by going somewhere nice for dinner." Without another word, she turned and walked upstairs. I guess I sighed a little to myself. I did feel bad, but this was Chicago. Between parking and dinner for two, a night at a restaurant cost a couple $100, if not more. I grew up in a family that thought bills came first. There was no way I could justify spending that kind of money when we were still falling behind and barely paying the minimum payment on our credit cards each month. It took me another 10 minutes to finish. I was going to watch the news, but realized Lori was still upstairs, so I decided to check on her first. When I walked into our bedroom, she was sitting on the edge of the bed crying. I really felt like a jerk. I sat down next to her, wrapped my arms around her, and pulled her tight against me. "I'm sorry, baby, I'm doing the best I can," I said, resting my cheek against the top of her head. "I know," she sniffled. "It's been such a hard year, and now that Lance is gone, we could go somewhere for the weekend. We should be taking a little mini vacation, but instead we're stuck here. It's almost like being in prison. I thought debtor's prison was abolished," she grinned. Too bad she was looking down when she said that. If she had been paying attention, I'm sure she would have seen the anger on my face. Our house wasn't a prison. Hell, I didn't even want to buy it. I thought it was too big and too expensive, but once she saw it, she just had to have it. Now I'm fighting hard to keep it, and she calls it a fucking prison. I had a choice. I could either open my mouth and tell her what I thought of her analogy, or I could walk away. I chose the latter. Over the next 2 months, the relationship between Lori and I got even worse. Conversations seemed to get shorter and less meaningful. We spent less and less time in the same room with each other. Lovemaking became less and less frequent, and Lori's participation dwindled. Her cries of passion turned into sobs, and the magic was disappearing from the bedroom. She made no secret of her displeasure that I hadn't asked her out, but I couldn't help it. Yes, we both needed a release. I agreed with her, but not until we had at least paid our bills. I promised her a night on the town in the near future, but that didn't seem to appease her. It all came to a head on Friday after work. I came home in an exceptionally good mood. I had just gotten a good contract, and with the commission I would receive at the end of the month, I would finally be able to spend some quality time with my beautiful wife. Unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to tell her about it. When I walked in, she was coming down the stairs, dressed as if for a parade. "Wow," I said as I watched her come down. "What's the occasion?" "I'm seeing some of the girls from work. Don't worry," she said with sarcasm in her voice. "They pay for everything. From the beginning, something seemed untrue to me. I immediately got a bad feeling. As far as I knew, Lori had never cheated on me, but you don't put on the sexiest dress in your closet to go out with girls. Besides, my wife was a proud woman. I couldn't imagine her going out and letting her friends pay for everything. It would be like charity. Only if she was out with a guy did she let someone pay for the whole night." I felt the hair stand up on the back of my neck. "Yeah, so who are these girls? What are their names?" She didn't even seem bothered by my question. "Just some girls from the office. You don't know any of them." "You didn't answer my question, Lori. I may have been born at night, but I wasn't born last night. You don't dress up to go out with your girlfriends. Who are you going out with? Are you on a date with a man? Oh, don't be silly, she said nonchalantly. I told you I date girls. If you don't believe me, there's nothing I can do about it. You're just paranoid because you have a guilty conscience. At that moment, I heard a car horn. I looked outside and saw a cab in our driveway. You're taking a cab? Yes, but I'm going to have fun tonight. God knows we can't afford a DUI, so I thought it would be wise. I suppose the girls pay for it too, I asked angrily. To tell you the truth, yes, they do. She leaned over and gave me a quick peck on the cheek. I have some leftovers in the fridge from last night. You can heat them up in the microwave. I might be late, so don't worry about waiting. And with those parting words, she walked out the door. I looked to see if anyone else was in the car, but from what I could see as she slid into the back seat, she was alone. I went into denial for a while. Sure, I knew Lori was angry, but I just couldn't believe that my wife was actually seeing another man. Heck, we had a son together, a life together. She wouldn't cheat on me, I told myself. There was just no way. I took the leftovers out of the fridge and stuck them in the microwave, but as my food was warming up, so was I. I wanted so badly to believe she was just having a good time with her friends from work, but come on. I went to the computer and found the number for the cab service. When the dispatcher answered the phone, I told him I needed the address of the cab that had just left my house, and then gave him my address. I wasn't sure what privacy issues they would have, but the guy on the other end of the line had no problem giving me the information. Plato's house, 3560 Elmhurst Road. I knew the place. In fact, Lori and I had gone there a couple times. It was a romantic restaurant with an attached bar that had a lot of dimly lit corners. Not the kind of place a woman goes to have fun with her friends, more like where a guy takes a woman to seduce her. By the time the bell rang to signify that my dinner was ready, a knot the size of a softball had formed in my stomach. I thought husbands and wives were supposed to stick together when things got bad, not betray each other. Heck, I thought, maybe I'll go to Plato's for dinner myself. The place had two entrances, one for the living room and one for the restaurant. If I entered through the living room, I wouldn't have to deal with the hostess. I wasn't interested in drinks, so I walked past the bar straight into the restaurant. A quick survey of the place showed my wife sitting at a table with another man. She was sitting with her back to me, but there was no doubt that it was her. They were both talking over a plate of appetizers, and a bottle of wine was already next to the table. I could feel my blood boiling. I stared at the bastard who was trying to sleep with my wife and started approaching in an aggressive stride. I was still a few feet away from him when Mr. Slick must have sensed something. He stopped half-heartedly and looked up. Our eyes met, and he suddenly became nervous. I was only a couple feet away when Lori looked over her shoulder to see what her lover was looking at. "Skylar!" she shouted. "What are you doing here?" "I came to meet your girlfriends," I said venomously. "Who is this asshole?" "Hi," he said, starting to get up. "Come on, give me a reason," I threatened. "You know damn well she's married. I guess that doesn't mean anything to you, does it? Tell me, do you leave a trail of slime behind you when you crawl?" He looked like he didn't know what to do. He was still half standing, half sitting when my wife intervened. "Skylar, please don't make a scene. It's Jerry. I work with him. Since you were too stingy to ask me out, he volunteered. He was just trying to be nice." "Great, my ass," I growled. "He's just trying to get under your skirt." I looked at Jerry again. He must have decided he didn't want to question me because he sat down again. "If you try anything with my wife again, help me. I'll drag you across town on a rope tied to the bumper of my car." "Come on, your evening is over," I said to my wife. She hesitated for only a second, but, like Jerry, decided not to test me any further. "I'm sorry," she said to Mr. Cool as she stood up. I think all eyes in the place were fixed on us as I took her hand and led her out the front door. In the car, neither of us uttered a word. Once we entered the house, however, everything was different. "What the hell was all that about, Lori? You tell me. Did you suddenly decide I wasn't worthy of being your husband anymore?" "No, of course not. I just wanted to get out of the house and have a little fun for a change." "Who's that, Jerry? How long have you guys been dating?" I asked, getting angrier and angrier by the minute. "He's just someone I work with, and we haven't met." We've had lunch together a couple times, that's about it. I mentioned that we weren't dating anymore like we used to and told him I missed it. He offered to take me out to dinner and dancing, and I accepted. Well, shoot me, she stated mockingly. I don't believe it, I said, almost shocked. I thought our marriage was stronger than this. We're going through hard times and you're ready to leave me? Who said anything about bail? I work every day now, too. I deserve to enjoy myself once in a while. If you won't take me with you, why should I say no to someone who will? Because you're my wife, damn it, I said, raising my voice. That's why. We're supposed to be a goddamn team. She didn't say anything back to that, but I could tell by the look on her face that she was mocking my words. Is this what I have to look forward to? Being married to someone I can't trust? Do I really have to worry about who you're with or what you're doing when you disappear from my sight? Tell me, what were your plans for the end of the night? Were you going to sleep with him? Of course not, she replied sharply. I looked at the woman I'd been married to for almost 20 years, and for the first time I didn't trust her. Not one bit. I don't believe you, I said. You lied to me when you told me you were seeing your girlfriends, and it didn't even bother you much that I didn't believe you then. Why should I believe you now? I admit it's been a tough year, but a wife should stand by her husband. Remember what we said to each other at the altar, richer or poorer, in sickness or in health. At that moment, my thoughts were as clear as a bell. Our marriage is over, I declared. This time her mockery was verbal. Don't be silly, she said dismissively. We're broke, don't forget. You can't afford a lawyer. How are you going to get a divorce? Heck, you can't even afford to move out. I wish I could come back with an intelligent answer, but truth be told, I was too stunned. I guess some people just don't know how to cope. She obviously stopped loving me and stopped respecting me. 19 years later, my marriage fell apart just as quickly. I probably would have broken down and cried, but I was mad as hell. Without another word, I went upstairs and started packing my suitcase. Lori waited a good 10 minutes before coming over to see what I was doing. What's this? She asked sharply. Oh, I realize you can't take me out to dinner, but you can afford to stay the night in a motel. Great, she shouted, turned around and walked out. Enright Automotive contracted to have most of their inventory made overseas, but we made some of the goods ourselves. We had a small factory adjacent to the offices. It had a large shower room so the workers could clean up before going home, and there was a couch in the reception area of the office building. A shower and a place to sleep was all I needed for the moment. When I walked down to the lower landing with my suitcase, Lori was in the kitchen. She called out when she heard the door open, but I never stopped to hear what she had to say. I threw my clothes into my car and drove off. I hadn't gone a mile down the street when my cell phone rang. Sitting in the car with my seatbelt on, I couldn't reach it even if I wanted to, so I switched it to voicemail. It only took me a few seconds to get interested in what she had to say. Once I got to the office, I pulled my phone out of my pocket. I pondered all the way there. I thought I'd hear a crying Lori apologizing and begging me to come back, but instead, Skylar, you're acting like a child. I told you I wasn't going to sleep with Jerry, and I meant it. Now get your ass home. Is not exactly what I expected. I'd left everything in the car except for a few essentials. No point in letting everyone at work know what was going on. It was still early, so I went to the break room and watched a little TV to try and take my mind off my problems. But it didn't work. I couldn't help but wonder what would have happened if I hadn't gone to the restaurant. Would she really have gone home after doing a little dancing? I guess I'll never know for sure, but I had my doubts. Even if she did, that slug, Jerry, didn't look like someone who would give up so easily. I'm sure that somewhere in the future he would have betted her. Eventually, I gave up trying to watch anything and set my alarm early enough to shower and get dressed in the morning before the factory guys started arriving at 7. Trying to get some sleep, I pondered what I was going to do. Lori was right. I didn't have money for a lawyer, or even an apartment. I'd have to figure something out. Lori showed contempt for our marriage and for me personally. There's no way I'm crawling home with my tail between my legs. I was actually a little surprised when the alarm clock woke me up the next morning. I couldn't believe I had slept so well on that couch. The damn thing was a torture device. I showered and got dressed before heading over to Denny's for a leisurely breakfast. I'd kill some time there until it was time to go to work. I was sipping my 4th cup of coffee when the solution to my problem hit me like a flash. Of course, it was so simple. Why I hadn't thought of it before was beyond me. Back in the Enright's parking lot, I pulled out my cell phone and took a picture. The first thing I did when I sat down at my desk was run an ad. 2 days later, I took the day off. I had a few errands to run. Knowing Lori would be at work, I drove up to the house and found the papers I was looking for in our personal file cabinet. On my way out, I grabbed a spare set of keys. Later that afternoon, I checked into the motel and called Lori. As soon as she heard my voice, she started up again. "It's about time. Are you done with your little tantrum yet? I can't believe you couldn't find the money to take me out to dinner, but you can stay at the motel for 2 days. Actually, I interrupted her, I'm staying at the office. The office? Yeah, they have a shower, a nice comfy couch, and a room with a TV. All the comforts of home, I said, lying through my teeth. She replied in the same way. Well, this is ridiculous. Stop being stubborn and come home. I'm not coming home, Lori. I told you our marriage is over. I just called to let you know you need a ride home. What? Why? What happened to the car? Nothing, I replied. Your car drives 1,000 times better than mine. A short silence followed as she undoubtedly tried to understand what I was saying. Skylar, what are you talking about? I sold my car and got $18,000 for it. That's more than enough to hire a lawyer for the divorce and the down payment on the condo. Of course, since I'm in sales, I still need a car, so I took yours. I stopped by our house this morning and got the licenses for both cars and the spare keys to yours. Skylar, she shouted. You can't do that. What am I supposed to drive? Actually, since both cars are in my name, I can do it. I haven't taken anything off the books. All the bills are paid for the month, so there's not much left. But if you budget, you should have enough money for food and cab fare. If you run out of money, I'm sure Jerry would be more than happy to take you out to dinner, provided, of course, that you give him what he wants. Suddenly, she spoke with a very depressed look. Skylar, please don't do this. I never thought you'd actually go this far. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have gone out with Jerry, but I was angry. Honestly, nothing's gonna happen. Lori, you lied to me, went on a date with another man behind my back, and then treated me with contempt and showed absolutely no remorse when I caught you. Face it, Lori, you don't love or respect me. You made that clear as day with the way you talked to me last night. Skylar, I'm sorry. I'm sorry too, Lori. We had a good run when life was easy, but when things got hard, we let each other down. He was surprised to hear sobbing on the other end of the wire, but it didn't matter anymore. He continued, The house is in our names. It's our only worthy asset, so it needs to be sold as soon as possible. He heard her aghast. Sell the house? Skylar, do we have to do that? Lori, we're up to date on the mortgage now, but I'm no longer paying for the house and you won't be able to pay the installments every month. Yes, it has to be sold immediately. I figure we could each walk away with $50,000 or $60,000. You can buy yourself a decent used car and get an apartment. Skylar, I don't want a divorce. Please, can't we talk about this? I'm sorry, Lori. It's not about what you want anymore. So, do you want to call the realtor, or should I? Epilogue. Lori was standing on the sidewalk in front of her apartment, looking up at the gray sky when she heard a flock of geese screeching off to the north, a welcome reminder that spring was just around the corner. She trudged through the melting slush to her 10-year-old Honda and headed toward Starbucks to meet up with an old friend. She was looking forward to meeting Julia. It was a typical Chicago winter with cold temperatures, lots of snow and slippery roads, so Lori spent most of her time cooped up in her apartment when she wasn't at work. Julie had already taken a small table in the corner and was sipping a latte when Lori walked in. They greeted each other with a girlish kiss on the cheek before Lori got in line for her Colombian brew. Standing in line, Lori thought what a treat it would be to get out and visit her friend. When she returned to the table with coffee in hand, she was greeted with a warm smile and a friendly voice. Lori, it's so good to see you. It's been a long time. Yes, too long, she replied with a tinge of sadness in her voice. I don't get out much anymore. How come? When we were younger, you were a party girl. Yes, well, life was a lot simpler in those days. I don't have money to go to parties anymore. What about dating? You remember those. You go out with some handsome man and he pays, Julie joked. Lori mimed a slight chuckle. That's kind of a 22 trick. You can't date men if you don't go out, and you can't afford to date if you're not with a man. What about guys at work? Julie asked. None but wimps and married men, objected Lori. Let's drop the subject, it's depressing. How are the kids? Oh, they're doing great. Charlie Jr. just got a promotion at work, and Debbie's in her 3rd year of college. They're growing up so fast, aren't they? Sure, Lori replied. Lance has 1 more year left on his contract and he's already talking about re-enlisting. He's loving it. How's hubby? Charlie's doing fine, working as hard as ever. Lori caught the shy look on her friend's face. What? Oh, nothing, Julia replied even more shyly. Come on, spill it. You were going to ask me something. Yeah, well, I was just wondering if you've seen Skylar. Not since we signed the divorce papers. She thought about it for a second. God, that was already 2 years ago. Why do you ask? I was just thinking, yeah, I'm not sure I should tell you, but it's probably best to hear it from a friend. What? Is he okay? Yeah, he's fine. I ran into him the other day and we talked. He's what, Julie? Come on, spit it out. Okay. He's getting remarried. Even though she knew it was long over, Lori still had a hard time accepting the news. She felt her eyes instantly begin to water. Her voice oozed sadness. It doesn't surprise me, she said quietly. He's a great guy. Her eyes lowered as she admitted. Sometimes I think back on what we had together and wonder how I could have been so stupid. She took a sip of her coffee, then lifted her face and looked at her friend. You know, I really loved him. I really did. It just got so bad with all the bills and everything that I started feeling sorry for myself. At the time, all I could think about was getting away from all our problems and having a little fun. Julia didn't answer anything. She figured it was better to just listen. Skylar was right. About everything. I did lose respect for him. I may have even stopped liking him for a while. Stupid, I know. It's not his fault he got fired. He was doing everything he could to keep us from losing everything. But I couldn't see beyond my own selfish desires. I just needed things to be my way. I remember one time Skylar suggested we go to the zoo for the weekend. But I wanted a night on the town, so I shut him up cold. Heck, he was even right about Jerry. That was the guy he'd caught me with at dinner. Skylar asked if I planned to sleep with this guy at the end of the night. I denied it, of course, but between you and me, I had every intention of doing just that. Oh, Lori. Yeah, I know. Believe me, Julie, if I could do it again, I would do it completely differently. Is he still living in that little apartment he got? Oh no, he left there a long time ago. I guess you haven't heard. Again, Julie hesitated to bring it up. What now? Don't tell me he won the lottery. No, nothing like that, but he got his old job at Vans. That was a while ago, a few months after your divorce was final. I think they started losing clients left and right after they fired Skylar. They finally called and asked him to come back. After some negotiations, he accepted their offer. Heck, now he's making more money than ever. As she finished speaking, Julie saw a tear roll down Lori's cheek. I'm sorry, honey. I shouldn't have said anything. No, she replied, shaking her head. It's no one's fault but mine, she said. I can't tell you how many nights I went to bed thinking about him. I prayed that the last 2 years would just be a horrible nightmare, and I'd wake up the next morning with Skylar lying next to me. But then I'd wake up and face reality again. Lori took a tissue and wiped away her tears. I'm happy for him, honestly. Give him this for me if you see him again. I will, dear, Julia said sympathetically. The girls changed the subject and talked of many other things. When they finally parted, Lori pretended that everything was all right, but as soon as she got into the car and was out of sight, she couldn't bear to cry.